Heaven's last sigh, the memory of sky blue. Good evening, wandering souls seeking refuge in the echo of stories. Have you ever looked at the firmament and felt that an essential hue has vanished? As if the world were holding its breath, waiting for a color it no longer remembers how to name? Tonight, on the Corner of Lost Stories, I will take you to a time that could be our own. A world under a perpetually gray canvas, uniform and without surprises. There lived Elias, the last man who treasured the splendor of sky blue in his memory. He was not a sage or a king, just an old man with cracked hands and a distant gaze. His days were spent in a small house on the edge of a city of metal and mist. The people of his time were practical, efficient. Their eyes, accustomed to the grayscale, yearned for nothing more. To them, the sky had always been this way, an opaque ceiling, predictable and monotonous. But Elias remembered. He remembered mornings so clear they hurt, a blue so deep it seemed like an inverted ocean. He remembered the white clouds, like cotton ships sailing on that cerulean immensity. This memory was not a blessing. It was his most intimate and solitary burden. He tried to describe it. It was the color of loyalty and calm, he would tell the children in the square. It had the intensity of the first sip of cool water on an unbearably hot day. The children would blink, confused, and draw the sky with their only pencil, the ash-colored one. The adults looked at him with a mixture of pity and condescension. Old Elias and his tailies of color. If you have ever felt the weight of a memory that only you hold dear, leave a sign in the comments. A blue dot, so that Elias does not feel so alone in his vigil. His memory had become an extinct language, and he was its only speaker. Every dawn, he would sit by his window, close his eyes, and paint the sky on the canvas of his mind. He relived the turquoise of dawn, the cobalt of midday, the indigo of twilight. They were his treasures, locked in a vault that no one else could open or comprehend. The world had suffered what they called the Great Fading. It wasn't a catastrophe, but a slow, insidious change that lasted for decades. A fine layer of particles suspended in the upper atmosphere had permanently filtered the light. Humanity adapted. Technology compensated for the lack of natural light. Cities glowed with neon. The nostalgia for the old sky died out with the generation that had known it. All except Elias, whose memory was as vivid as the first day. He kept a single object from that former world. A small ceramic tile dot. It was chipped and old, but it preserved a fragment of pure, brilliant blue. Sometimes he would take it out of its wooden box and hold it up to the artificial light. It was his anchor, tangible proof that he was not mad, that blue had existed. One afternoon, a little girl sat beside him on the park bench. Her name was Luna. She didn't mock him. In her gray eyes, there was a spark of genuine curiosity. What was it like? She asked in a voice as soft as moss. Elias felt his heart jolt. It had been years since anyone had asked with true interest. It was like a promise, Elias began, his voice trembling with contained emotion. The color of the hope you felt upon waking, knowing the day offered you an infinite canvas. A color that made you look up and feel small, yet part of something immense. Luna listened, motionless, her small hands clasped in her lap. There were so many blues. Elias continued, losing himself in his own words. The pale blue of a robin's egg, fragile and new. The steely blue of a summer storm, full of power and electricity. And the deep, almost purple blue of the night sky, just before the first star appeared. Luna said nothing, but her eyes shone with a light Elias hadn't seen in decades. They met like this for many afternoons. Elias was the storyteller, Luna his sole audience. He told her of the sky's reflection on a calm lake, of the blue veins in marble. She absorbed every word, building a world in her imagination that she had never seen. One day, Elias brought the small wooden box with him. With trembling hands, he offered it to the girl. "This," he said, is a whisper of what was. Luna opened the box and held her breath. Inside, the tile shone with a life of its own. It was a color so vibrant, so alien to her world, that it seemed like magic. She touched it with the tip of her finger, as if touching something sacred. "It's real," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "It was," Elias corrected with a melancholic smile. "And in your mind, it can be again." That day, Elias felt a part of his burden lighten. His memory was no longer a solitary monologue, but a shared dialogue. The memory, in being passed on, had not been lost, it had multiplied. Weeks went by, and Elias felt himself growing weaker. His time was running out. He no longer went out to the square, but Luna visited him in his small house. He told her his last stories, the finest details he had saved for the end. He told her of the song of the birds, which, he claimed, was different under a blue sky. He described the taste of wild strawberries, which ripen sweeter under the direct sun. He confided in her his deepest longing, that someone would remember beauty for beauty's sake. One evening, with Luna by his side, Elias looked out the window at the gray shroud. "You know, little one," he said in a thread of a voice, "the blue isn't entirely gone. It's here," he whispered, touching his chest. "And now, it's here too." And he gently touched Luna's forehead. That was his last lesson, his final testament. Elias passed away that night, silently, with the image of a cobalt sky in his mind. The world did not notice his absence. One less old man, a storyteller silenced forever, but something had changed. A seed had been planted in fertile ground. Luna did not cry. Instead, she felt an immense responsibility, a legacy that now belonged to her. She kept the blue tile not as a relic, but as a compass. She began to search for pigments, to experiment with minerals and plants, something no one did anymore. People sought the efficiency of digital color, not the imperfection of matter. In an old chemistry book, she found the formula to create an ultramarine blue pigment. It was a long and arduous process. She ground lapis lazuli she found in an old abandoned jewelry shop. She mixed the powders with linseed oil, following the forgotten instructions. And then the miracle happened. On the tip of her brush, blue was born. Her first stroke on a canvas was timid, almost a whisper. But the color was so intense, so full of Elias's memory, that it took her breath away. She didn't paint a sky. She painted a door, a blue door in the middle of a gray wall. She painted a lone flower, an impossible blue, growing in a crack in the pavement. She painted the eye of a bird, containing all the immensity Elias had described to her. Her art was strange to people, incomprehensible at first. Why use a color so striking, so unreal? But her works possessed a power, an emotion that the gray world had forgotten. People would stop in front of her murals, which began to appear on the city's walls. They felt a pang of something unknown in their chests, a nostalgia for something they had never had. They called that specific hue Elias's blue. It became the color of silent dissent, of the longing for the unattainable. Young people began to wear small pieces of fabric of that color on their lapels. Musicians composed melodies that tried to capture its melancholic and hopeful essence. Luna never told the full story of Elias to the crowds. She knew the memory was more powerful as a myth, as a shared feeling. She grew into an old woman, her hands permanently stained with blue. She passed her knowledge on to a new generation of artists, of dreamers. The sky never turned blue again. The great fading was permanent. But blue had returned to the world, not as a ceiling, but as an idea. It lived in art, in music, in a silk scarf, in a lover's gesture. The memory of a single man had become the dream of many. Elias had not saved the sky, but he had saved the memory of its beauty. And in doing so, he reminded humanity that the most important colors are the ones we carry within, those that, even in the grayest of worlds, we refuse to let die. This story, whether a legend or a premonition, teaches us about the power of a single memory. It reminds us that beauty, once experienced, never truly disappears as long as someone keeps it alive in their heart and shares it with another. What memories, what colors, what feelings are you the last to hold? If this story has resonated in the deepest corner of your soul, we would love to read your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if you believe a memory can change the world. Subscribe and hit the bell so the echo of our stories always finds its way to you. Until next time.